You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
Go.
That's a great way to start the podcast.
Or is that going to be in there?
That's
That's like getting the energy out.
Yeah. Now we're rolling.
Yeah. Sometimes that's the vocal exercises we do.
Yes.
So
Not
you know
the
how they had that like,
wow.
We're like
Little Tasmanian devil.
Yeah.
Good morning, Steph.
Good morning, Craig.
We have been on cloud. I said 11 on a story that we posted to Instagram because it's like way higher than 9. But cloud 9's good too.
9's pretty great.
Right. But we have just been
cloud 9.
So incredibly grateful and excited over the past few weeks leading up to this amazing month of April. We celebrated our 8th year anniversary.
Yes, we did.
We launched Energy is Love together.
Yes, we did.
We graduated from the Sacred Yoga Institute, and we are now officially certified yoga instructors.
Yes, we did.
So it's been a powerful month for us.
Very much so.
Right?
Yes.
And there's a bunch of other stuff too. And that's what this episode is going to be about.
It's about a bunch of other stuff.
But it's been feeling incredible.
Incredible.
Right?
Yeah.
Kind of like overwhelming, but in a really positive, good way.
I loved what happened, like, because we had our graduation, we had our final class, our online ceremony, which we led a class for the school.
Yes.
And afterwards,
you're okay.
Can I keep going? Yeah. Okay. Afterwards, like when it was done, we had so much energy, so much going on to get us there, that as soon as like we signed off, you and I just both like dropped back on our mats and just laid there. And for a good like little bit, we just didn't move. And then we giggled because we realized both of us were just like,
yeah,
like basking in the accomplishment, basking in like, you know, we were so grateful for ourselves. Like we took so much accountability, like we did it.
Yes.
There was so much there. So we were just like feeling it and being in the moment. Also like, oh my gosh, taking such a breath. And there were so many things. Yeah.
And this was like, we're recording this the day after.
Right.
So there's a lot that we're going to be kind of like marinating in. And we're going to do an episode later on where we talk about like our yoga experience. Cause I mean, that encompassed an entire year of our life. And when we started, we were completely different people. Completely different people.
Yes.
That's not this episode though. We're just teasing it. We'll talk about it on a later episode. When we have a chance to kind of, are you getting distracted by bugs?
There's a black butterfly out there. I've never seen a black butterfly, and that is the most gorgeous thing.
Yeah.
Can you see it? I'm sad. How do we not get a picture of this? We're witnessing, like, it's incredible. It was like, it looked like this, like black, this like super like blue. I don't know, man. That's a sign. Come on now.
Talk. Is it a shadow butterfly?
It's a shadow butterfly. You got to live your shadow. I love that shadow butterfly. But they're also going to come on the podcast.
Yes, by them, not the butterflies.
Not the butterflies.
Our yoga teachers.
Pretty much the same thing as butterflies, though. They're pretty amazing. And I see them in the same reaction. I'm like,
It's Matt and Ash, the yoga couple.
Yes.
And if you are in like any way, shape, or form interested in potentially pursuing a yoga certification or a career in yoga, or if you just want to like change your life for the better, then we recommend going and signing up for their for their institute.
Yeah, definitely sign up. Also, when we started, we were like looking into the aspect. I don't want to, I'm going to do a plug here. Like I'm not intending to, but like, it's just, I have to like express this because it's just so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was all of the, oh my gosh, I'm gonna do such a bad job because I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared for this. The school offers what they offer is such a deep, intricate work inside yourself. It's so much inner work processes and going through, really diving in, and you're learning like the whole tantric lineage of yoga. You're learning, you're going through the 8 limbs, the namas and yamas. There's like so much of the heritage that is coming through, which you do get like heritage in schools, but this is different. They have this whole like journey to yourself, this whole like hero's journey where you're really going in and learning these inner work processes on such a deep level that it's this 8-month program. It's this long thing where you're having all these calls. So we went into it for that. We went into that for the self-help. We did not think that we were going to be yoga teachers. I mean, it was cool. There was that. And we knew that we were going to benefit from yoga, but we were going through the program because of what we were going to gain for ourselves. And then along the way, we also found ourselves teaching yoga and we're doing it and it's amazing. So if you're like, that doesn't just check them out. Just go check them out and just be open to seeing things in a very new way.
Yes.
They're amazing.
And we'll have them on the podcast in the not too distant future.
And then I'll try and say all that again.
And we'll talk about our yoga experience of going through that life-changing training in a future episode as well. But today, what are we getting into, Steph?
Well, we were going to get into like anger.
Are we not anymore?
Well, I'm just feeling so happy. I'm in such a good mood. I don't feel like I'm very convincing when I'm like so anger.
Maybe this is the right time to discuss it.
Right. It probably is.
Right. Definitely not when we're angry.
Wait for a trigger time to talk about something triggering.
Do you remember years and years and years ago when we did the episode right after, like not even after, like we got in a fight, came home, pushed record, and tried to cluster our way through an episode of the podcast when we were angry and like upset and triggered with each other?
I think I have a different memory of that. I think mine's a little different.
Yeah. What's your
yes.
memory of that? I don't even remember what episode
what's my rememory?
Not your rememory.
No, that was such a pretty way to say that. What's your rememory?
Yeah.
My rememory is we were in a triggered moment. And you, like, I don't know if this is how it happened, right? This is how I remember it, but my experience, like, I'm open to it being different because I was in a trigger space and it was years ago. And it's something that I'm still triggered by. Is that you were like, wait, let's do this on the podcast. And I was, are you kidding me?
Oh, yeah. I totally was like,
you pushed pause in it.
So
we're driving home angry and you're saying you want to record it. And I'm like, dude, what is... That
was interesting.
And I tried to show up because I'm like, I want to be vulnerable. I want to show up. We're going to show us how, like, it's a journey, how we work through it. Only, like, I have no memory of the actual episode.
I don't either.
Other than I was like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
Like, I hate it. I never, like, even listened to it. I never, like, tried to revisit it. I have no idea what it was. I have no idea what kind of a job we did. And at the time, we did the best job we could. And now it would be better. But we were practicing.
Yes.
So even though I'm like, that was rough.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to bark. I'm not like rough. I'm like, it was raw and it was rough. It was difficult. We were like practicing then showing up. And I'm still not going to go back and listen to it.
Anyways, that's not this episode. How do I remember it?
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think we were on the way home. We were in the car. I don't have any memory of what we were arguing about.
Oh, I don't have a clue.
I'm sure it was really, really important.
Right.
And I was very much like, let's push pause and we'll go home and we'll record this fight. And basically I remember my thought process was this is going to be a genius thing to do because it's going to be in the moment.
Yeah.
We're going to display in like a healthy way of how to go through an activated experience together. And that's not what you should do.
you don't do it publicly.
You should not push record on a podcast and at least
but how many times do we do that still?
At least at that point in our life,
right.
we didn't have the skill set to be able to navigate all of those uncomfortable, difficult, triggered emotions.
Yeah.
Because this was probably 3-4 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, it was a while ago. I mean, as far as I feel like it was early on.
It was before 2020.
Yes, it was.
Because I don't even think it was a video. It was back when we were just doing audio.
Thank goodness, because we were doing it on our couch.
Yeah.
In our front room. Yeah. And so I look at it, and it's so funny because this is the moment where that stopped being a triggering moment for me.
Right now.
Right now.
Oh.
Because I'm looking at that and all the ways that I felt about it. I'm like, we were practicing.
Mm-hmm.
You were practicing. I was practicing. We were it's no longer I'm like, oh my gosh, I was terrible. I'm like, no, that was us practicing.
Yeah.
And all that charge just kind of
just
left. I'm not triggered by it anymore. That's pretty cool. I'm like, I remember my perspective. Oh. I'm like, oh, no, that's actually kind of cool. We were practicing.
Yeah.
We got it wrong, but we were practicing. So did we get it wrong?
Did we get it wrong?
Did we?
Nope, we definitely got it right.
Yeah.
Because we're still here.
Yeah.
Right. And we're doing much better.
And now look at us.
But we're going to talk about anger today. Right?
Yes.
Are you sure? You're good?
I don't
Want
know.
to talk about anger?
Well, don't emotionally monitor me.
Okay, I won't emotionally monitor
That
you.
makes me anxious. I'll start emotionally monitoring you.
So the idea is that anger is an emotion, right?
It is.
And it's one that we all, and by all, I mean literally all of us, if you're listening to this, you struggle with anger. Like, I don't want to project out onto you, but there's a really good chance that you struggle with anger because it's an emotion that's not very easily accepted in the world today, right?
Oh. And maybe you feel that, maybe not, that doesn't mean you don't get angry, but maybe you're one of
able
the
to process
the gems
through
that
it a little bit
process.
better.
Yeah.
But it serves a purpose.
Yes.
And you and I both struggle and have struggled over the course of our life with it. And we still do. It's one of those things that we're still practicing. So we're going to talk all about anger today,
Yes.
at least to the best of our ability, in hopes of not getting too angry.
Right? I might.
Or getting too triggered or too activated with each other. So where do you want to get started, babe? Do you want to go first talking about your journey with it?
I don't know. I'll do my best. I don't actually. No, I think I always go first. Don't I? I feel like I talk the whole time. I feel like this podcast is really the Steph show. I'm over here like, let me tell you about my feelings.
It's not.
And you get to talk a little bit here and there.
I feel like it's I don't want to talk about anger, so why don't you go first?
Well, this actually comes up a lot. So am I stalling and like trying to get it out? Of course. Yeah. I don't, I'm like, oh, I'm totally panicking. Also, that's true. Like, I feel that so much. We'll be done. And I'm like, I just talked for the entire podcast. And every time like I have the intention, I'm not going to talk the whole time. And then I feel like I just monopolize it.
I'll go. I'll talk about my experiences with anger.
Yeah.
Trying to drop in a little bit and trying to think over the course of my life. I remember being little, and I remember feeling, I guess if I like paint the colors now, right? Like if I look back with the emotional maturity and intellect that I have today, I can see a little boy that was angry, but truthfully that anger was just covering up a bunch of other things, right?
Yeah.
So I was a scared little boy that didn't know oftentimes what was going on and struggled a lot with I don't know how deep I want to go into all of that because we're trying to just keep it focused on anger. But I remember being like full of anger.
Yeah.
As a little kid. I had two older brothers, so we fought a lot, you know that, obviously. And that's how like you dealt with emotions. You dealt with your emotions through anger and violence. So whether it was yelling or hitting things, or hitting each other. I mean, my brothers took out a lot of our aggression and anger and emotions and energy on each other. We also would like destroy the house. Like every door in our house had holes in it from being punched or kicked, and there were holes in the walls. And I remember getting so angry one time that I just ran into the wall, like tucked my shoulder and ran into the wall and completely dented in the sorry, our phones keep going off and doing all sorts of weird things to the
it's the new moon of Mercury
to the audio. I know, right? And the eclipse thing, and then like
hopefully this is recording.
It is. Don't jinx us. Anyways, I put a big hole in the wall when I was a kid. Just all of that stuff was how I kind of dealt with anger. And then when I couldn't externalize it out onto something and or someone, then I would internalize it. And I did a lot of like self-harm things where I would not just like punch things that I couldn't break, like brick walls or trees, and I would basically try to hurt myself, but I wasn't like, that wasn't the thought process. It was more of just full of anger and rage, and so I would break things and like self-harm. I've got tons of marks on my body from burns. Like, we've got a nice little lighter here, and I know you and I both have plenty of marks on our body from burning ourselves with lighters. And I used to push pins into my knuckles and slam staples into my arm and all sorts of stuff. When I got older, like when I was a teenager and in my early 20s, I would put cigarettes out on myself. And there were, like, the very first time I did it, I don't think it had anything to do with anger. I was trying to show off to people, and I put it out in the middle of my forehead. And there's still, like, have you ever seen that? You've seen that before, haven't you?
Yeah.
Anyways, that's not necessarily related to anger. That's just a lot of self-hatred and all sorts of other bag of Craig's trauma. But specifically anger. It's one that I've just never been able to process in a healthy way. And I will bottle it up inside. I will kind of just keep it all in until it comes out. And it comes out in, when I was younger, it was all of those ways that I described. And then kind of in the course of our relationship, and into my adult life, it comes out with like slamming doors and sighing like I just did, but not in an overwhelmed way, but like you can tell when I'm upset and when I'm angry. Yeah. It's obvious. And like driving fast, there's times when we're driving in the past when I would get angry and then I would drive aggressively. I wouldn't ever, I don't know, there's just so many, like all the ways that we all take out our anger that we're repressing. I have a lot of those traits and a lot of those behaviors. And then like the idea that anger, I like to think of anger as a masking emotion where it's definitely valid and it's there and it serves a purpose, but it's also covering up things underneath it.
Yeah.
So it's not to say, like, I think this is maybe we should make this distinction where it's a standalone emotion, it's anger, and it serves a purpose. And then it also is a placeholder that will protect you from other emotions.
Oh, yeah.
But that's not its I mean, it is its purpose if we use it in its subconscious way, kind of in a shadow way.
In its shadow way.
Right.
Yeah.
Where we will use our anger to avoid feeling.
Mm-hmm.
We'll use anger. I'll use anger to protect myself from,
right,
whatever I'm going through sometimes that I'm having a hard time processing. But I do think that, like, in its healthy form, it's not designed to do that. It's there as a catalyst for change.
Yeah, like an indicator of like something it's telling you there's been a violation, there's been something that's off, something like that anger coming up is telling you that there's something like amiss in the system that you get to look at, something that maybe it's a boundary that you're violating for yourself, maybe a whole bunch of different ways that it can show up.
Do you have any questions or anything?
I do. I want to know, because you did a really good job talking about how it kind of like came into existence for you and how it manifested when you were growing up and how you...
All of those behaviors too, by the way, that like my mom was passive with her anger. And then my dad, I don't want to say he was outwardly, it doesn't matter. But obviously all of those actions are learned behaviors.
Yeah.
All the ways that I was shown and taught and modeled how to deal with anger and how to deal with emotion. So, but sorry, what were you saying?
No, you're doing a good job. Also, you talked about how certain aspects of it continued on in your adult life and even in our relationship. But also I want to like point out now, how does it show up in your space now, and how do you experience anger? How are you experiencing anger now? And what do you do with that when it comes up for you?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
How do I experience it now?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if I can get too close to the mic. I definitely experience it far healthier than I have in the past. And I'm definitely at a place with it where I will use it as that catalyst for change, where something will kind of continually upset me, right? And you and I can think of a lot of examples of this right now in my life, right? A lot of things that are making me angry.
Excuse me.
And I'm getting really frustrated with some things that I want to change in my life. And it's like that anger and that fuel takes me into that next spot where like it's the pride, where I deserve more.
Yeah.
Like it's ready. It's time for change. And I'll use it for that now, and use like, that makes me sound like I'm like, I will process it that way now.
Yeah.
And I still have moments of processing it unhealthy where I will shut down, where I will internalize it, where I will use it to protect me from some other thing that I'm feeling in the moment, and then project out this wall of defiance, and like I will put up my leave me the fuck alone vibes. And then when you get close, I'll get angry. But by and large, I feel like I'm using it as that kind of catalyst for change and growth that it's designed for. And I also don't spend a lot of time angry anymore.
You don't. Like, I was going to point that out too.
Yeah.
Like you do, like you experience it, and you have this thing that's like, raw. And then you do step into that healthy pride part of it where you're like, this is, this is not, I deserve better than this. And I'm not going to allow this in my space anymore. And then you move into accountability and courage, and like you're going right up the themes, right? And you're like, what am I learning from this? You start to realize, oh, it's because I didn't hold this boundary. And like you process it, and then you move into like calmness, into action. And, when it comes up, you experience, you go outside, you take care, you allow yourself a process to go through, and you're doing breath work and allowing like these, you're finding ways to access it and allow it to be. And that's not like you're perfect all the time. Nobody's perfect all the time. Like, right. It is.
No, I've mastered it. So like if they were going to give away belts for anger, I would be a 10th degree black belt.
Right. Almost that 11th, like that cloud. I could, interesting. Hold on. I need a drink.
I want to give some context because now that you're talking about it, and we're talking about it a little bit more, like one of the things that I'm comfortable to, because there's some aspects of how it's manifesting in my life that I don't want to talk about at this point, but I've had some relationships, like I've specifically had a couple of relationships over the past couple of months that weren't healthy relationships, and that were causing me, like they were bringing up a lot of anger inside of me. And it's interesting because like it was relationships with other men, and over the course of time with those relationships, anger would come up, but then I would like fall back down into the unhealthy cycle of it, where I would use that anger to cover up really like the pain and the sadness that I was feeling in regards to the relationship or the behaviors of those other people. And now like I was able to use it in a way to recognize like the totality of the situation, where I'm sad and I'm hurt and I'm upset, like at them as well as at myself. Because there's an aspect of it too, like when you start to realize that you have played a role in all of those kind of toxic, unhealthy relationships, right? It's not just the other person that's at fault, right? You have a equally role in the situation. So I get angry, and what that allowed me to do was to like end those relationships and just move on and no longer stay in the toxic cycle and the pattern of it, and instead just shift out of that unhealthiness. And like you said, using all those different healthy coping mechanisms and healthy behaviors instead of, I mean, all the long list of unhealthy coping mechanisms that I've used. So Was there,
No.
I elaborated while you took your drink, but
You did so good.
you need cough drop.
I do, but I don't want to sit here and be like, I'm afraid of it clicking on the mic while I'm talking because coughing's way better. I'll just sit here and be like, you'll be fine.
So yeah. Any other questions, thoughts?
How do you feel right now?
I'm okay.
Yeah. You're like, it's your turn.
I know you're like prolonging it.
I'm consciously doing a better job at sharing the mic, and nothing helps me do that more than a topic that I want to avoid.
You do a wonderful. Not every episode is the Steph Show where you're
it
just
feels
talking.
like that so
I
much.
know it feels
like
that.
really, really feels like that. I don't know.
I have that feeling sometimes too.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not that.
Okay.
Like this is the you and me show where we share and
Right.
talk all the time. So you're okay.
And I'm hyper focused on it because it's a great avoidant tactic right here. I'm like, I can just sit here and be like, you know what? Today's the day that I'm just not going to talk.
Yeah.
Here's this thing that's really difficult for me to talk about. So you know what? Turns out I talk too much, and you should definitely talk.
I also want to address before you go, right?
Okay. Yes.
Oh, sweet. Talk more.
Please.
I also think that there are some stereotypes that society has in regards to anger and how what's acceptable and what's unacceptable in regards to like the masculine and the feminine. So regardless of how you identify, that is just something that exists in the world, right? Where anger is an acceptable emotion for men and for the masculine, and an unacceptable emotion, I think, for the feminine.
It's a stereotype, yeah.
Right. And that creates a bunch of issues as well, right? So I fell into all of that as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of those things that I talked about, obviously, just a minute ago, is that toxic behaviors and those stereotypes that I was programmed with because of all the different things. But so that's just another caveat. And I'm sure
caveat.
you can, because you're going to express now
Yes,
what it's like for you.
Right. Well, I'm going to do my best and, get ready for the next 3 hours while I try to get a 5-minute thought out.
You can do it.
I can do it. I can do it. I've got my opening throat chakra rock in my hand. Got this. So anger is really, really difficult.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly, and I'm not alone being like, oh, it's really hard for me to handle. Like it is. Like many, many people share this with me. But just speaking from my experience in this context, so I can alleviate the caveats and all of that, I'm just going to give my experience. Anger has been just extremely traumatic. So, I'm even like losing my train of thought here because I'm getting ready to say hard things, right? So my brain's like, no, did you see that butterfly earlier?
We know how to detach
what
from
were you
this.
going to say? Like my defense mechanism, Shadow comes in so hard to protect me. I literally forget what I'm saying while I'm saying it.
Yeah.
And there's a part that's like ADHD in this, but there's a part, it's just straight trauma that it's like, boom, it takes it and it can feel my system starting to amp up with the fear and poof, it just takes it away.
It's its default mode.
Yeah. Because it was so dramatic. So, my first experience with anger, just like very, very, very young. And anger was it was a violent thing. It wasn't, there was never a healthy anger modeled. I didn't realize that was a thing. Like, it was either that when healthy anger or unhealthy anger became an awareness to me, the awareness that I had, it was totally wrong, but it's what I had. My understanding was that unhealthy anger meant getting angry and healthy anger meant not getting angry. So it didn't even, like, when I finally understood that there was a duality, it was like, this is how you do it right and this is how you do it wrong. And there was like, anger's bad. Not anger is the only acceptable thing.
Acceptable, healthy way.
Yes.
If you're in anger in any way, then you're fucking weak and you can't control your emotions.
You're out of control. You're like, you're violent, abusive.
Get yourself under control.
Right. And then also that aspect that women like really, like, it's emotional, it's reckless. It's that just the dramatic and being like ridiculous is how it
Yeah.
is. And men, it's, it's understandable and expected, although they're not supposed to be violent. Also, it's understandable. All of these just really, really, really unhealthy things. So my connection with anger was only in its toxic form. Like, this is like stuff that I'm actively learning too. Like, I was understanding healthy anger and how to process healthy anger. And it's okay to like feel anger and that it's really a signal of violation. Like, I had all of these things recently, right? And then the last years, but this new actual breath awareness is new, because this has been something that throughout this work I've been continually battling up against. I've been like, this has been years process healing, but my own anger has been really, really difficult for me. To be around anger is really, really difficult because I still had that association that anger leads to violence. Anger leads to violence. Somebody mad at you leads to violence. Even if, like we've talked about this on the podcast, even if there's not a history of violence with us, I have a history of violence. So anger terrifies me. Anger from other people terrifies me, or it angers me. So I'm ready to fight fire with fire, or I'm just terrified. So my own anger
Would terrify
me. But like also, right? Because I didn't know how to, I disassociate, disconnect from things and terrify and try and hide it away. But it was in me so much. And so it would also come out of me toxic, right? So here's this like anger situation that, we'll say a violent situation that I'm calm until I would snap, right? Till like this violent thing then got met. So they call it reactive abuse. And I hate the term reactive abuse because like when somebody's pushing you to the point and physically manhandling you and hurting you and threatening you, and then you finally get to the point where you defend yourself, they call it reactive abuse. I'm like, oh, that's so shitty. Like, defending yourself should not have an abuse title to it, but we'll go into that another time. So that would come up and also be, because then the other person would be like, see, you're the problem. You're the problem. You hurt me. You freaked out. So this way that it continued that. And then outside of that, just having no, what's the word? Not having a reserve, like this, having all of this stuff and not knowing how to express anger, and having like violations come in, whether from other people or like boundaries that I couldn't keep, boundaries that I didn't know how to have, boundaries that I didn't know how to hold, like all of these different ways that it comes up. Anger. So this reactivity, right? So you're not processing your anger, which means it's just sitting here building up in you, but you're shameful for it. So then you yell and you're like, oh, shameful for yelling. And then it comes out and then you try not to, which means you go around the house with this like sharp edge to you. And like everybody knows you're angry, even though you're not angry.
It's like your pot is simmering all
the time.
And one little tiny thing like that, when like you're boiling water and you turn the heat down and then it's just like, you can see that the water it's like one little thing. Right? If you turn the dial up just a tiny notch, then immediately you got this rolling boil. Right. So you're just simmering the whole time with that anger.
And it's not always, right? But it's like there's this anger here. And it would be really funny because things are fine, right? I'm happy. Everything's good. One little thing would come to shift it. And I'm like, why am I overreacting? Why is anger what's coming up? Mm-hmm. My biggest go-to for anger was self-infliction. So either the to get away, not being able to handle it, but I would like the same thing you express through a child, like self-inflicting pain, like so much. There was so much abuse that came in that I also learned this is how you manage anger. And my little stuff was like, oh, take it out on you. Anger, this is what you're for. So I was very self-harmful, fought with self-harm my entire life. There's times it still comes up. I have to consciously like, you can't do something as a child all the way up and then be like, oh, I'm not going to do that anymore. You have to sometimes talk yourself down. Sometimes I literally have to like look at myself in the mirror and be like, you're not doing that. You're not going to hurt yourself, because I've made an agreement that I am kind to me. I am safe with me. I will protect me. I will not hurt me ever again. But sometimes we got to walk myself back down off that ledge.
That's your survival mechanism.
Right?
Like that's what you use to get through all those experiences. So of course that's like going to be really hard, because there's a part, I think, of your brain that's like, that's how we survive. What are you talking about?
How we survive. And it's also how that was like, like the teapot.
Mm-hmm.
That was my release. I didn't have any release. I didn't have anything to do with it. I wasn't taking it out on others. I had to whoom.
Yeah.
But I say I wasn't taking it out, but like people couldn't come in my space when I'm like that. So I would always like run and hide in the bathroom, and like all of these things are just like, ah. I would incorporate things. There's like they talk about the warrior yells, right? And they talk about screaming a release, try and go do things. And I only knew how to do that in a reactionary. I didn't know how to access with intention. I think I'm just skipping too much. It's not going to make sense.
You're doing great.
You think?
You're not skipping too much at all. You're doing just fine.
Okay. I will do my best. This is still triggering.
It's a hard topic to
talk about. It is
really. About. It would be really easy if we just talked about it like, yeah, this is what happens. You don't, if we can talk about it from a surface level, but we're healing this part.
We're healing it. And I'm still in an active healing phase.
Yeah.
So while I am bringing it forth, it has not finished like processing. So one of the things that one of my coping mechanisms that I did is because I was always trying to mitigate anger around me or redirect it from others to me, because that's how I could protect. I wasn't strong enough to physically like take on the threat, but I could like wave the flag and get its attention and pull it to me. And I did that my whole life.
Yeah.
So that's a lot to really like feel that. Okay, stay on track. I can do this. So minimizing anger. When I would also like minimize others' anger. Like, it's okay. Like, here's this, but like make those excuses. It's just not that big of a deal. Or like really judge it. Like, you should be over it. You shouldn't be that angry. All of those things. I did that to myself. So even my anger, that you're damn right, I had a right to be angry. I have things that were extreme violations, that boundaries that I was not keeping for myself, being hurt. There was, as a child, you don't have the ability to be like, this is my boundary and you're crossing it. You were taught to push that away. If you are not able to communicate that, because a caregiver is the one, you don't learn how to set that boundary. You learn that your boundaries aren't a priority. Your boundaries don't matter. Theirs do.
Yeah.
So like trying to make peace with that meant minimizing the anger, minimizing the things, which then I continue to do to me. Like, oh, my anger is just like, I don't really need to process anger. It's just, I would continue to minimize my emotions as unnecessary and just not relevant, not anything that it's not worth your time. It's not worth my time. I should just be over it. Right. Because also I couldn't be reactive. I couldn't get angry. If I got angry, more violence came.
Yeah.
Every time that I hit the point where I was with anger, I would get it squished.
So like we've seen this, like this has been a big part of the last couple of months.
Right.
And that's kind of like you said, you're actively in the healing process of this, because we would get to this where we'd be in the middle of maybe a tense conversation. Sometimes it had nothing to do with us, right? It was, you were getting really activated by the outside world in a sense, or whatever was, happening. And it always, like, I could see that it was always coming back to anger. Like all the stuff that was happening, you'd be like, I don't know what's going on and why I'm feeling this way.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, I think it might be anger, babe. Right. I think you're angry. I think you might need to express some anger. Have you looked at anger? Maybe this is correlated directly 100% with your anger.
I'm like, no.
And you're like, fuck. no, that can't be it. And then we'll
I'm
move
like,
on.
I'm angry all the time. I'm always angry. I don't want to be angry. It's not that I'm not feeling angry. I'm like, I'm sitting here like saying it like that. I'm like, I am angry. I don't want to feel I am angry. You're like, that's how you're doing with it. I'm like, I know that I'm not touching really on the anger. I'm only acknowledging anger if I have a reaction. And a reaction equals anger. And I felt like a reaction of like, oh, I can't. And going like all of these things, I didn't understand that I had to feel anger. I had to actually feel it, because I'm like, what do you mean? I am feeling it. I'm trying to like be done feeling it. It's not that I am angry and I don't want to be angry and then feel bad. I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be angry. I've healed enough. I shouldn't be angry. You're not doing anything. I shouldn't be angry. I should have a longer fuse. All these shoulds. And taking time to be angry made no sense. And I also could not grasp anything other than, why would I want to continue to be toxic? I'm not going to access this behavior that is toxic, because that's still like the only thing that I could see. I don't want to lash out. I don't want to be angry. I want to do it differently. I'm like, great. So here's these tools. No, I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. Kept minimizing. So just like that awareness of, I wasn't actually afraid of anger. I was afraid of toxic anger. That anger is really toxic anger is scary. Everybody should be like, this is the word that, like we talked about like at the beginning, sacred yoga, we talked about, this is Matt's words. Like, yeah, toxic anger is scary. Everybody should be scared of it. Toxic anger. It's scary. It's violent. It's destructive. It's domineering. It's like all of these things that are just, that's scary. Yeah. It's dangerous. That it was still the concept of it. And so when I would feel this boil up in me, I wanted to squish it down. I didn't want to yell. Right? I didn't want to yell. I didn't want to be short. I didn't want to have a temper. I didn't want to and then not even be able to get it out. So that just means that I shut down. Either I snap and then I shut down and then I disassociate or disappear. Right? I didn't want to do that. And that's not how I spend my day. Like, I'm sitting here really focused on this aspect. This isn't like every moment of the day, because it's sneaky. If this was every moment of every day, it would have been a whole other issue. But the last few months, it was like, it's time to look at it. So it was all the time. I felt like it was coming up so much. And maybe it wasn't on the but on the inside, it was. And I think I said to you at one point on the podcast, I'm like, everybody knows, like, you're not thinking your anger's coming out, right? And I'm like, everybody can feel it. And then I was like, shit.
Right.
All right, mirror. I'm thinking my anger's not coming out, but everyone can.
I'm doing a good job
it.
of hiding this.
Like, right?
Nobody can tell that I'm angry right now, as you're like sitting there fucking vibrating with energy and frustration. And
right?
How are you feeling? Why? What are you asking me that for?
Right? What are we going here? So anger is always trying to get like the power back, the power that you lost. It's this destructive thing. And some of the ways that I would also do that was, it comes out destructive for others, comes out destructive for you. But I also thought that it was acceptable as long as it was only directed at me. Because what did I learn?
Again, right?
This is my, right. So it just it keeps coming on to these whole, I'm talking so long. I'm sitting here.
Guess what?
I've got papers here too, because I'm just I want to touch on stuff. What?
Guess what?
What?
You are 100% okay to be talking.
Yeah.
Your voice actually really matters, and it's important.
I can only handle so much right now. I'm super scared.
I'll give you a little drink.
Thank you.
I'm not going to give you the ocean. You're doing a great job. Keep going.
Thank you. Okay. So
all this awareness, awareness, where has it taken you at this point?
I keep saying about how the difference between toxic anger and how that is not the only form of anger. And a lot of people know that intellectually, right? They can conceptualize it. Yeah, of course. But things that you know here, your body doesn't know. And so I get this, but my body didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And so as soon as there was this identifying of toxic anger, that this is my association, that's my connection, and that healthy anger is still anger. It's just like what you do with it. Like there's this different ability. There's this different thing that comes up. It is a teacher. It is like a warning. It's a check engine light coming on. Like something is wrong in the system. Like your anger is here it's a messenger for you. And like something is, I really want to like hone in on this point because it was so profound, but I'm getting really overwhelmed. Like obviously we're talking about anger, and the loop that I would go in is when I would hit anger and then feel that like even touch to get to where I shouldn't have to experience this. This shouldn't be happening. Oh, we're going to change this, like that pride. Then boom, I would just come back down into feeling like crap, feeling like I didn't have options. I wasn't going to get out of it, or maybe I deserved to be punished, which, those thoughts still come there. And realizing that what was actually happening was just that cycle of a loop. But what I got to get curious about is what is, like you said, what is the anger teaching me? What is the anger? Like, what can I learn from this? And realizing that anger, I'm so nervous right now. I'm so nervous. This is so important. We'll start with the past. So when you've experienced anger this way, when you've experienced traumatic events that either comes from childhood, past relationships, like a lot of times when you find just wherever you're at, we don't need to pinpoint where it came from or the origination. That's its own journey on its own. But when you have a history of this and anger comes up like that, just declaring awareness that the association is with toxic anger and that the anger is a messenger. Anger that has come up from being violated, either by not keeping your own boundaries or not being in a situation where you were allowed to have boundaries. That's in your system and it needs to come out. And that can look like many different ways. As much as I would like my anger to come out through a really intense journaling session or a walk in the woods or, dancing it out and really getting it out. There was so much, like maybe in the future that'll be enough. But for right now, it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
There was so much there. And I really needed to express it. I really needed to not just say, I'm angry. I needed to embody and empower my own protector, being my own protector, being my own like force, and just coming through and really releasing. And so again, those warrior yells, I'm not going to get into too much right now because that'll take, that's just one aspect of it. If you want to know more about warrior yells, it's so much more than just screaming it out in a reaction. There's an intention process that happens. It's a whole process that goes through that I couldn't access. So I had to get mad at the past, allow the past to be felt instead of just I'm healing and I've processed, and I'm anger, but I'm just more forgiving, all of that. I needed to have a space to be angry, and that doesn't mean I have to take it out on somebody. That's not healthy anger. Having to take it out on somebody isn't the form here. Yeah. That's the toxic. Making somebody pay, be punished, lash out. Toxic anger is directed at somebody. So when you're feeling anger towards that's the toxic aspect of it. So the same with yourself. If you're like, why did you do that? You're so stupid. You shouldn't have done that. That's toxic. You don't deserve to punish yourself that way. There's another avenue. But I could not really allow that release. So you helped me. Cause I was just my plan, I'm going to get in a car and I'm going to really focus on these things and allow it to come out. But when I haven't allowed it to come out in anything other than I didn't know how to access my full anger. I knew how to be reactive, but I didn't know how to consciously step into anger. I couldn't. I wanted to. I had the tools. I had the, intellect. I couldn't access it. I couldn't pull it up. It was it was getting stuck.
Yeah.
And I could not allow it out past my throat. And so we went through this like really amazing thing. You helped me with breath work and getting through, and a container had to be set. I'm really feeling like I shouldn't share this stuff. Like it's too far. So we set this container. You and I went through this beautiful process together. And like if you're interested in more, reach out and I'll get into deeper details. But right now I just kind of want to.
Okay, take a deep breath. Take a sip of water.
I'm like, don't tell me what to do. I feel like I'm just mumbling my way and I'm not getting to the point. And it's so important. And because I'm jumbling over my words, like I'm almost going to start crying because I'm like, oh, this is so important. I want to speak to it so much and I can't. Like, I don't know how to. And so I'm sad. I'm really sad.
Yeah, baby, it's a part of you inside that you've recognized finally. And it's like, this part deserves to be seen. This is a part of me that, you know, serves a purpose. This is a part of me that has a place. This is a part of me that was shut down for so long and abused and tortured in all sorts of different ways. And now I'm finally able to connect to it. And oh my God, the release that has happened. Oh my God, right? The freedom, the space that's opened up inside of me, all of those things, right?
Thank you.
And it's okay that it's a lot.
Right.
And of course we're on a podcast talking about it, so it's difficult, right?
Right.
Like the idea that you're going to be able to eloquently express yourself when you're still in the middle of it.
I'm still in the middle of it.
You're still processing this. This is really fresh for you.
This aspect, this awareness is fresh, not anger, but like in seeing it in
a healthy way.
In a healthy way.
Like you could say in the last couple of weeks, this is the first time that you've ever been able to access anger in a healthy way.
In a healthy way. In a healthy way. And I allowed it to be seen.
Yeah.
Right? I allowed somebody to support me in my anger. And also like there's that conflict here of like, well, I want to be supported in my anger. I should be able to be angry and like stomp around and like, that's not being supported in your anger. That's expecting somebody to drop their boundaries and allow you to be like that's not what this is. That you witnessed in a way, like it didn't get directed at you. There was communication. I digress.
Yeah.
Okay.
Plenty of examples of the way that this happens toxic.
Yeah. And so that's also a gift. When you have all the ways of all these toxic angers and how it shows up and how it's showing up for you, that is like, when I was asked, like, what have you learned? I'm like, I don't know. Like, here's all this stuff. And it's like, you learned a lot then. You've learned a lot of what not to do. And so just that mindset of like feeling like I don't know how to do it, but I've been trying to figure this out for a long time.
Yeah.
I have been like diving in and trying to figure out how to access my emotions or how to hide them or how to like be angry or not be, like all these things. Like I have been researching my whole life toxic anger and what not to do to experience it, what not to do to release it.
What about like the scientific experiment, right? Like if you set out a hypothesis of I'm going to prove that anger is healthy, and I have to go through 10,000 iterations of it not working and that it's toxic and that it's unhealthy in order to eventually get to the example of like, oh, it's actually healthy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So like that's what we're doing. And chances are like that's what you're doing if you're sitting over here like feeling all of this coming up. So you go through shame and guilt is about like what not to do. It goes through and it takes you just like all of this, what not to do, all of these memories of how you handled anger or how it came up are all like all of these things of what not to do. And you might have some in there that are like, oh, you did it right. Good job. Like those, that also goes into like this scientific thing where you're learning. And so it's like good attempt, doing it over and over and over and over again. So
tweaking the formula little by little.
Yeah. And like the ego left to itself is going to keep perpetuating these ways. It's going to keep trying this over and over and over again. And I was literally convinced that my anger was like, if I let it out, if I expressed it, only having that toxic, I was going to hurt people. And I don't mean like I was going to be violent towards them. I didn't think I was going to suddenly go around and be like, ha ha ha, you know, being violent towards people. It wasn't that. I just thought my yell, my roar, like I was going to lash out. I didn't want to lash out. I didn't want people to feel scared around me, because people being angry around me is scary. I didn't want people to feel that. I didn't want to be witnessed. I didn't want to express it. I just wanted it to go away. I just wanted it to go away. I was like, come on, like, let's be rational here. I'm going through all of these healing processes, and like I'm working on this constantly all the time.
Yeah,
I am working.
It should just get wrapped up into all of that.
My shadow. I am like a shadow worker. I'm a shadow working coach. Like, I know how to do this. Like, why, you know, and it's not that thing of like, I expect to be healed. I don't. I know better than that. But I did expect to be able to figure this freaking anger out. Yeah. And it just kept bubbling. And the more I was like, I should have this, I pushing it away. It was coming to the surface. It's like, you're here to look at it. We're going to look at anger now. We're going to look at anger now. Okay, you just go ahead and keep trying to not look at it, but you're going to be pissed off.
Right.
Continuously. And I was like, it was starting to be like where I was getting angry at everybody. Just everybody. It was coming through. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And my like partner here, I'm like, what are you doing? Feeling like you're attacking me, because it comes to that violation, that boundary. So realizing when you can, okay, so I keep jumping all over. So being able to sit with the past anger, being able to really sit, being able to let that out, to express it in a way that is just like you're embodying it, you're feeling, you're building it up, and then releasing. Just releasing. And it's not a cry of, it's not an anger cry. It's not a like you're angry. It's this confident, it's this protecting. You are embodying the biggest protector of yourself. You are embodying like the warrior for yourself. So there's a different from being like, oh, I'm angry, and like really like this warrior, this protective yell of, you know, like you are not going to get through this. You are not going to hurt this. It's this different. And this clicked for me because I had an experience with one of our children when they were little. And this roar basically that came out, we were in a store, and one of the little ones liked to hide in the clothes. And, you know, it was this like this fear. And so I was like keeping an eye, and every once in a while that would happen. And I would like pull them out and it was fine. One time, this little Houdini hid so well, and I couldn't find her. And I started to panic. And it like there came this shift of I can't find my child. Scared, into it was like I recognized I was sending out a warning, because I called her name. Like I yelled her name, and it was this intense, but it was like this violent. Oh God, she probably thought I was yelling at her like that. But I knew I was like warning somebody. I know I'm looking, I will find her, and I am a ferocious beast. You will not, you know, it was a warning. Here I am coming for you, person. You are not taking my child. And it was like that. And then she like popped out, and I was like, oh, and I sobbed and held her, and we left the store. And I was like, you can't do that. Oh my gosh, I was so scared. But when I let that out, she was like, oh, we're not playing anymore. I'm right here. So I had this thing, and I could connect to that because I accessed like this different for her. So I accessed that for me, but then I couldn't get it out, right? Yeah. So I knew what it felt like. I knew how to take hold of myself. I knew how to protect. I knew what that roar sounded like, but I couldn't get it out. So you helped me with that. So again, so when you're looking at the past, being able to actually go through that and take time, set time aside in a non-reactive space where you're setting intentions, you're pulling up that energy, you're pulling up these violations, these things that happened, so you can roar, so you can let it out, so you can have this full expression that changes. So you don't have this all boiling over, because now you are expressing this in this healthy way. And it leaves you, it feels different.
Yeah.
It feels different. There is an actual release inside of you. When you're reactive yelling, when you're reactive off-gassing, you don't get that release. But when you do this in another way, you have this release. Your pot isn't simmering. And when something pops up, when you're in the present anger instead of in a past anger, you can recognize, like, what is happening here? What can I learn? Where is the violation? What expectations did I have that aren't being met, that I'm actually mad at? What boundary? It's never about the other person. It's about what you're experiencing. And this doesn't go to like abuse. This isn't like, that's a whole other conversation.
We could go on and
I know
on
I need to stop. I'm so sorry. There's still so much more. We're
You're
only
fine.
on.
We're not going to get through like
I know
the entire scope of how to heal your anger and what you need to do, right? That's like a 10-part series that we'll create and release on Netflix next year or something. Where
this was just my experience.
Yeah.
This is how I felt it. This is how it showed up for me. This is how I accessed it. I had a release that was just a new way. It was my new perspective that, like, we're always learning.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like an encouragement. Like, if you've been doing at this for a while and there's still these things, like, keep going. You're going to get that peace. You're going to get that perspective. There is always, like, even if you're like, I shouldn't have to deal with this by now, and you know better, you know that doesn't play, like, keep going. If you're just starting and you think it's impossible, like, just keep going. Like,
I think there's an
journey.
aspect of like everything that we've been talking about. It makes me think that like anger is like this beautiful part of your shadow that serves such a beautiful part. Like it's the servant of the shadow, because it will bring forth all the stuff that you need to look at. Because everything that's making you angry and upset right now is correlated and connected to some sort of violation. It is correlated and connected to some sort of like, this does not sit right with me. And it might be present day, whatever, right? It might be the person that's pissing you off in the moment. It might be your partner that is treating you in such a way, or it might be correlated and connected to your past and the traumas and all the different things. But like anger is just being like, hey, I found this in the dark. Do you want to look at it? And you're like, no, go take that back there. Okay. And then it like goes back and it's like, hey, I found this. Do you want to look at this? No, I don't want to look at that. It's like, okay, you got a whole closet full of this shit back there. I'll just keep bringing it up until you decide you want to look at it.
Yeah.
But
there is one other thing with it. If I want to share real fast, like, the problem with this is how I was approaching it. And I'm not saying I'm the problem, because you'll hear, I'm not like sitting here and being like, it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. Even though kind of it's my approach. This was something that is so deep and so shameful and so fearful. And this was so thick that I didn't allow help for this. I kept like, I will allow help. Like, we're in it together. I need help for so many other things, but this one is like, I got to figure this one out on my own. I will use my tools. I will figure this one out. This is because I'm not applying myself. I still had that like narrative. I wasn't allowing help in. It didn't feel safe. All of the things that the ego was saying that wasn't. So I was continually battling anger by myself. It was my own personal journey. Nobody could help me on that. I didn't feel safe, and I felt stupid for being angry. I felt wrong for being angry. I felt like I was being a juvenile, a child. So all the different ways that either I was afraid of hurting or I was ashamed of having. And I should be done with all of that. It was I kept it all right here.
yeah.
All of the ways that I know to reach out for help, all of the help that I have, all of the assistance, all of the training, all of the things, I let help into every area of my life. Not this, but I didn't even see that I wasn't allowing help in. It took until I actually allowed somebody to help me, and then it was two people helping me with the anger, that shift happened. that a big transformation happened, that I even realized, oh, I've been trying to do this by myself for years.
Yeah, about 40.
And I had no idea. I couldn't see it. That was like one of my biggest shadows right there. Thinking that I had to do it by myself and not realizing that I was doing it by myself. Working with coaches, working with mentors, and trying to figure out, not like, here's this thing and I want to be okay with this feeling, and like hitting this thing. Anger wasn't even it. Like, I'm going to go back to like looking at the traumas and all of that and unwinding, but thinking the anger was going to go away. Like all of these ways, the anger, I refused to look at subconsciously, like refused to allow help in subconsciously, had no idea. Like I had no idea I was doing that, completely going at it alone instead of allowing help in. So I guess that's
You did a great job though.
Yeah.
I mean, it was exactly when it was supposed to happen.
It was when it was supposed
It's always that way, right?
Yeah.
So like we said, that's our experience with anger in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And there's so much more that could be unpacked in that
Right.
space. And we'll probably do another episode in the future when Steph gets pissed again.
What are you so what are you going at alone? Like,
well, it's just a good reminder that we
Right.
all need help.
we all need help.
Yeah. Like the
Yeah.
truth of it is, I think there's parts of our journey that we have to go at alone in a sense. Like we have to walk some paths by ourselves. But the idea that we have to walk all those paths by ourselves, and even the ones that we have to walk by ourselves, I think we still have like the support. Like imagine it this way, where you've got, like, I'm standing on one end of the path and be like, okay, this is it. You can do this. You can totally walk this path. Okay, I'm going to walk this path. I'm going to do it. And be like, I'll be over on the other side. Or we've got somebody else on the other side. All you got to do is walk this section by yourself, and then we'll be waiting for you on the other side. You're like, okay, I can do it. And then you go through that part by yourself, right?
Yep.
Fully knowing that you're supported from behind, you're supported and like you're heading towards support. Like that's the idea of those sections that we have to walk by ourselves. You're still supported
Right?
in that space.
Yeah, nobody can do it for you. That doesn't mean you're doing
Exactly.
it alone.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah.
Let's change it up.
Let's change it up.
Yeah. We got to answer this week's question.
Let's do it.
So every episode we answer a listener question. You can email them to us. It's info@energyislove.love. Message them to us on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, or ask us when you see us next week. Hey, I have a question for you that I want you to answer on the podcast. Cool.
Yeah.
We will do it. This week, the question is, how can I identify the subconscious behaviors affecting my life and my relationships if they're subconscious?
Right.
Right? I think there's some undertone here of like, how am I looking at things that I can't see?
Right.
Help me identify things that I can't see. How is that possible? Like that seems like somebody's gaslighting me. Yeah, just identify your subconscious patterns and behaviors. Cool. How do I do that?
Yeah. If I can't see it, how am I supposed to do this? Come on now.
So there's a lot of ways that this can happen. Not just like we all have subconscious, like we talked about one on this episode, right? Where your anger was bubbling under the surface and lying hidden for a really long time. But there's lots of ways that you can go through the process of identifying what's happening kind of behind the scenes. One of the ways that it manifests is oftentimes if you have some sort of subconscious process that's taking place, it will be reflected back to you. So you will project that issue out into the world in front of you, because your subconscious can't like, hey, we need help with this. So you will throw it out there, and then you will get that reflected back to you all the time. So you can recognize that that's the nature of how things work and bring awareness to that aspect. What am I thinking about that person? What am I feeling about that person? Why does that person keep triggering me? All of those kind of things that you like experience, that's the mirroring effect. That's the projection of what's happening inside of you that then is going to take you into the subconscious place of like, oh, so when that person triggers me, I have a subconscious response that goes on inside of my body, and it's correlated and connected to X, Y, or Z, right? So that's like a really, really good practice to start exploring your subconscious, is start looking at the ways that the world around you is like triggering you
Right?
and bringing stuff up.
Getting curious about it.
Yeah. Another way, and this just came to me as well, is people will tell you what is going on with like your subconscious. Right. Like, for example, I'm explaining to you, this might be your anger. Right. Like, no, that's not it. I think you might have some issues with maybe anger that you might want to look at. No, that's not it. Right. The world around you will also highlight your subconscious behaviors that need to be addressed, because whatever is coming out subconsciously, the people around you are going to pick up on. And they're going to be like, hey, why don't you change that? Or what's going on here? Or like, if you start to tune in and listen to what the people around you are telling, both in a good way and an unhealthy way, like there's positive reinforcement that can be like, hey, you know, I think maybe this might be an area where you need to work on this, and I want to support you in that. And all of that's really beneficial and helpful. And like, get your shit together. Like, what the fuck, you know, all the unhealthy ways that we I wasn't saying that to you.
No, it's okay. I was just like, I distracted over because I was thinking, I was digressing. I was thinking of the ways that you had to be, anyways.
You just have to be mindful that just because it comes in an unhealthy way, it may still be bringing awareness to something that's happening under the surface. Yeah. So there is some, you know, kind of, what's that silver lining to some negative stuff that might come your way. Now, that's not saying take abuse and none of that is what I'm saying. Yeah. It's just recognizing that the people around you are going to be telling you what's happening in your subconscious. Yeah.
There's also like pattern recognition with that, like the repeating patterns. So how people are continuing to show up in your space is like an indication. So are people always like angry and like around you? Are they like, just what are you seeing like coming into your space a lot? What is happening? Just like, does you have that thing of like, this always happens to me. This always happens to me. Well, that's a good idea. That's a shadow to look at. This always happens to me. Why? Why? Yeah. Because of this, and whatever you answer your whys with, give it another why. Like, again, it's like going to that toddler thing.
It's all like, the layers that, like the Russian doll, you just keep going in and in and in and looking. And that's how you start exploring your subconscious.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's so much fun.
It's fun.
It's a riot. Like, it's a really good time. Get your friends together and just explore subconscious programming together. It's so much fun. It'll bring you guys really closer together. But thank you for the question.
It's a great question.
And again, send them to us anytime. Reach out. It's info@energyislove.love. You can also message us at the website if you just go to energyislove.love. Right? That's the website. You can message us there directly.
Yeah. I was going to say, and like, you can come join us at the Energy is Love together. Yeah. It's like, you can find out about that. It's our online group that we have created and working with couples, individuals who are interested in this very thing, like exploring their shadow. And it's more than just shadow. Like, we have so much that we go into, but where you get support and help on these things that are hard for us to go into at times and maybe hard for us to see. So you get, again, these calls, you're going to jump on a Zoom call with us and be able to get this like interaction, like
come hang out,
like, come hang out. Let's figure this out together.
Last but not least, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap up. And if you enjoyed this episode and you found it beneficial, go leave us a frickin' review somewhere, wherever you're listening, and rate it 5 stars and do all of the cool things that say, I love this podcast, because that helps this podcast grow. And we appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. And we hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful day.